Hi there, everybody. I just wanted to give you some information about the next essay that you're writing. I know we already talked about some of the elements and the purpose and some concepts that you'll be applying, but I wanted to give you a little bit more information based on the reading in chapter 12. So if we pull up the prompt from Canvas, we'll just remind ourselves that we're writing the academic argument essay. This is where you're going to propose something. It's a proposal type of argument. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to be exclusively a proposal argument. It could also have causal analysis, would have causal argument in there. And you're going to be using all these different elements of argument that we've been studying throughout the semester. So again, the purpose of this argument is to construct your own proposal for an academic audience. So you're going to be looking at rhetorical tropes and elements of argument like claims and warrants and enthymemes. You're going to be considering the different types of appeals to your audience. You're going to be considering what type of audience you have. So these are all the components, as it says here, course concepts, all these different chapters. And it said in particular, you want to look at academic arguments, chapter 17, and then chapter 12, proposals. So you're going to be looking at those two chapters in particular. And then I just wanted to remind you that the subjects that are eligible for proposal, you're proposing something about related to the British monarchy, to Brexit, or British conspiracy theory. You could also make a proposal for any aspect of our study abroad experience or of COVID-19 as it relates directly to our specific situation. So if you want to recommend that or propose that students get a full refund, or that students should be eligible to go on future trips, or if you want to say that they should have had deeper testing when we landed, or that other airlines should have done further testing or deeper testing or any kind of monitoring when the people on the flight, when the travelers landed. So any of these different arguments or proposals you can make. So let's look at, I have a few notes here. Let's look at some things to remember from chapter 12. So on page 287 in chapter 12, it says the structure is this. A should do B because of C, right? So this issue is A, B is the solution, and then C is the reasoning, the evidence, the support that you give. That's the kind of argument structure or thesis structure that you're going to make. Now, there's different kinds of proposals, as it says in chapter 12. There's practice, things that people do. So people should do this or not do this. People should argue or argue for a revote for Brexit, or they should be informing younger generations about how Brexit will be carried out, or older generation, whatever. You get the idea. So things that people do, and then policy, the way things are handled, the way that refunds are handled, or checking and screening is handled. Those should be changed. So you're making a proposal for either a practice, the way people do things, or of policy. The policy itself needs to be changed, which determines how people do things. So sometimes there's a little bit of overlap there. And then what's the criteria? What makes up a good academic argument? So what might make up a good argument is, well, these are not just what makes up a good argument, but what is it doing? Like, what are some of the features of what it does? It calls for a change. It has to have a solution for a problem, right? So it's got to be that problem solution format. Focuses on the future, on some kind of plan, and it's centered on the audience. So you really need to know who your audience is, and you need to know what their behaviors are like and what their attitudes are, and then you need to use successful appeals for your argument to approach that audience. Remember that we talked at the beginning of the semester about the difference between convincing and persuading. Well, convincing is when you change your reader's mind. So your definition essays, those were convincing, right? You were trying to convince your reader of this definition, but you weren't really asking them to do something necessarily. Some of yours did, but some of them did not. But here you are asking your reader to do something, right? So you're asking them to do something differently in their behavior if it's a practice, or to help work towards changing a policy. But both of those require action. So that's another criteria, or that's another thing to be considering for this proposal essay. Your audiences, they might be general audience, a broad audience, or they may be very specific. If you have a general audience, then it's not a good idea to use technical language and jargon, because you're just trying to establish ethos as the person making the argument. So you want them to relate to you. You want to seem likable. You don't want to seem stuffy or arrogant or erudite and someone who is off-putting. If you're writing for a general audience, you want to just keep in mind what's some general information and terminology that I can use, or to explain any terminology that you use. Then you have a specific audience, and you also want to be careful when you're appealing to a specific audience. This is an audience that is familiar with what you're talking about, the concepts or basic issues. So you don't need to define these terms, but you definitely need to use terms of that subject. So creating a proposal. How do you go through? What are the steps for creating this proposal outline? Define a problem. So you have to first identify a problem. And oftentimes that'll come through research. So you have to think about, what are some of the issues or topics, excuse me, what are some of the issues or topics that are allowed in this outline, right? So Brexit, the monarchy, you've already done research. So it might be easier for you to define a problem because you've already done some research, unless it's a new subject, like if it's one of the COVID-19 or study abroad subjects. You haven't done a lot of research for that, probably. So I'm assuming. So that might take a little bit of research, more so than any of these other 3 topics we've been researching. So you define a problem. Here's an issue. It's either an issue, again, of practice or of policy. You're going to make a strong claim. So you're going to say A should do B because of C. You're going to show why or how it will fix the problem, how it will solve the problem, right? So you want to have a real clear relationship between why something is happening and why what you're suggesting will fix it. And then you have to prove that what you are proposing is feasible, right? That it's likely to be solved, and it's something that's manageable, that people can actually do. But first you have to make your reader care. That's why it's so important to consider your audience. Who are you writing this for? What are their motivations? What are they concerned with? What are some of their experiences maybe? So you want to paint a vivid picture first of what the actual issue is. Be concrete. You can do this through examples, also called case studies, where you study a particular case, particular example of this issue. Relate it to them, show how it affects them. Almost every problem can affect a large audience. So you want to really connect what you're arguing, what you're proposing, to your audience. And again, that goes back to knowing who you're writing this for, having a specific target audience. You have to prove that it's significant and pressing, that it's happening now and we need to solve it quickly. And then you want to show why previous attempts have failed, right? Why have other solutions that have been offered not worked? Because it's almost like showing counter-argument, because you're considering all these vast approaches. You're demonstrating to your reader, and you're establishing ethos when you do this. You're establishing with your reader that you have done research, that you know about this issue. So, what are elements of the essay? Meaning components. What would you put in the essay? First, you have to define a problem. You have to make a strong claim. You have to be very concrete, very clear. Because of this, I'm recommending this, right? Because it will fix it in this way. Show how and why it will fix the problem. So you define the problem. This is the problem. This is how we should solve it. And then this is why it's going to work. And then prove feasible. Some other elements to include. Evidence, for sure. You want support, right? Any kind of supportive research that can prove that this is actually an issue. Counter argument. You want to think about what people might argue in response to what you're proposing, if they're going to oppose what you're suggesting. Remember, counter argument always goes near the end of the essay, because you want to really establish your case before you start arguing what other people might counter with, right? What they might oppose with. You want a specific call to action, because again, you're doing more than convincing with this essay. This is a persuasive essay. So you're getting your reader to act. So give them a specific action they can do or perform, whether it's changing their mind and then, phoning in their ideas, or sending an email, or voting, or writing a letter, right? What's the call to action? And then it's fine if you include personal experience, as long as it meets the criteria for including, which means it's related to what you're talking about, it fits logically with the other reasons you're giving, and it's not self-serving, right? Because I've seen proposal arguments completely unravel once the author gets into personal experience, because then it becomes clear that, oh wow, they really have a personal investment in this that goes beyond, or that is clouding their ability to recognize this is not an issue for other people. It's an issue for you, and you are trying to make your very personal experience into a larger context, and it doesn't really fit. That's what it means, fits logically with other reasons, it's related, and it's not self-serving, right? So you can talk about your personal experience if you're arguing something for study abroad. You can definitely argue your personal experience for sure, because that's making it a vivid picture, right? Because you have that personal experience. It's really appealing to your reader because you can get concrete and specific. But if you're only saying that your program should have changes, or that yours was most significantly impacted, or any way that it's self-serving, that it's really only there to help you, you're proposing it to help yourself, not so much a larger group, then it can become problematic. Like I said, I've seen some really good arguments unravel once people started putting in personal experience, because their intensity of their personal experience overshadowed the other research they presented and provided. So it made me really question, are they able to gather good research and research effectively without being totally biased and blinded by their own bias, which is again why you include counter argument. So getting ready to write. When we have our conference beginning Tuesday, tomorrow, you want to have a thesis or a claim, consider your audience, have a couple sources where you're going to get your information. Again, these could be the articles that you have been working with. And then any potential problems or challenges you think you're going to face in writing this essay. Like, I'm not sure if I'm going to get enough resources. I'm not sure if I can really pull out my personal experience, and I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to be unbiased, or that I'll be able to give as much information as I'll need to have. Sorry. So you want to be prepared for our conference by just having this outlined. And again, does it have to be perfect? No, that's why I'm conferencing with you. I want to help you maybe craft a thesis or a claim. I want to help you, guide you to resources or information where you can get evidence and support. I want to help you consider audience. So all the things that I did for those of you that I worked with for the definition essay, I want to help you with for this as well. So it's just a quick recap. I guess not so quick, it's almost 15 minutes, sorry. But I just wanted you to have this outline of how to move forward with this next and final essay.